There's a conversation you've probably been avoiding. You know you need to have it. You know the problem isn't going to disappear. But every time you think about actually sitting down with that person, your stomach does a little flip. Yeah, me too. And here's the thing. Feeling nervous about a difficult conversation doesn't mean you're bad at leadership. It means you're human. The skill is learning how to manage yourself so you can manage the conversation. So today, I'm going to give you 5 simple steps for having difficult conversations without making them worse. And I'll show you how to manage emotion, help the other person take ownership of the solution, and know when taking a break can actually be the right thing to do. Hi, I'm Matt Jennings, and welcome to Matt Jennings Leadership. If you're an aspiring or new manager looking to become a more confident leader, you're in the right place. Now, difficult conversations are one of those things that nobody really tells you about when you become a manager. You get the title, you get the responsibility, and suddenly you're expected to deal with things that you'd quite happily have avoided 6 months ago. So let's make it a little easier. Step 1, prepare. Before you have the conversation, prepare for it. And I'm not talking about writing a 14-page script. You just need to get clear on 3 things. What happened? What was the impact? And what needs to change? Stick to facts and observable behaviour. So instead of "you're always late," try "you've arrived after your scheduled start time 4 times in the last 3 weeks. And on 2 occasions the team were waiting for you." That's much easier to have a constructive conversation about. And before you walk into the room, manage yourself. If you are feeling anxious, take a couple of slow breaths. Get yourself grounded. You're not trying to remove emotion, you're trying to get yourself into a state where you can think clearly and respond rather than react. Because here's a line worth remembering. Before you manage the conversation, manage yourself. Step 2, you're going to open the conversation. And I'd keep this really simple. Tell them why you're there. For example, I wanted to have a conversation with you about your start times because I've noticed a pattern recently and I want to understand what's happening. See, it's clear, it's calm, and there's no drama. And importantly, you're not jumping straight to a conclusion. You're creating an opportunity for them to explain. Because you might think you know what's going on, but the reality is you don't. Step 3, explore. This is when you need to listen. So ask questions such as, can you help me understand what's happening? What's getting in the way? How are you seeing the situation? And then listen. Now, don't listen while mentally preparing your next argument. Actually listen. You might discover there's something going on that you didn't know about. But I should add, listening doesn't mean agreeing with everything they say. It means understanding the situation before deciding what happens next. And this is also where you can start helping them think about solutions. So you could ask, what do you think you could do differently? What options have you got? What would help you make that change? You're not leaving them to figure everything out themselves, but you're helping them to think. And it's important to manage the emotion. And this is where difficult conversations can get interesting because they might become angry, they might become upset, they might even become defensive. And your instinct might be either to fight back or get the conversation over as quickly as possible. Don't. You don't have to catch their emotion. Stay calm, breathe, and slow the conversation down. And if necessary, take a break. You could say something like, I can see this is difficult. Let's take a couple of minutes and come back to it. Or would it help if we took a short break and continued this conversation in a few minutes? And remember, a pause isn't an escape route. It's a reset. You're not abandoning the conversation. You're creating the conditions for a better conversation. And that applies to you as well as them. Step 4 is to clarify. Now that we've listened and explored, it's very easy for a difficult conversation to become just a nice chat. So something needs to change. And this is where you make the expectation clear. For example, I need you to be ready to start at 8 AM as scheduled. That's your responsibility as the manager. The standard needs to be clear. But here's where I want you to avoid another common mistake. Don't immediately tell them exactly how they're going to fix it. Ask them, what do you think needs to happen to make that possible? They might suggest getting an earlier bus. Maybe they need to change their routine. Or maybe there's another solution that they come up with. Help them work through the options. Challenge them where necessary and support them. But let them own the solution wherever possible, because you own the expectation and they own the solution. And that's a really powerful leadership distinction. Step 5 is agree. Finally, agree what happens next. What will they do? By when? What support do they need? And when will you check in again? For example, so you've said you'll get the earlier bus from tomorrow and leave home 20 minutes earlier. Let's catch up next Friday and see how things are going. Now you've got an action, an owner, a time frame and a follow-up. It's much better than, okay, hopefully that's sorted then. So let's put that all together. Here's the framework. Prepare. Know the facts and manage your own emotional state. Open the conversation. Explain why you're having the conversation in the first place. Explore. Ask questions. Listen and understand. Clarify. Be clear about the expectation and help identify the solution. Agree. Agree the action, ownership, time frame and follow-up. Prepare, open, explore, clarify, agree. They are 5 steps, simple enough to remember and practical enough to use. And here's the really important bit. A difficult conversation isn't necessarily a confrontation. Sometimes it's actually an act of respect. If someone is struggling, if their behaviour is affecting the team, if they're not meeting the expectations of their role, they deserve to know. Your team deserves to know. And you, as their manager, have a responsibility to address it. The earlier you have the conversation, the easier it is likely to be. Don't wait until a small issue becomes a massive one. And you'll notice something interesting. Difficult conversations don't exist in isolation. Sometimes a difficult conversation is a feedback conversation. You might need to give someone clear, constructive feedback about their behaviour. And sometimes that conversation leads into agreeing a goal, which is where the SMART goal approach we talked about in the previous video can come in. You might finish the conversation with, okay, here's what we're going to work on. Here's what success looks like, and here's when we'll check in. Suddenly you've connected conversation, feedback, goal, and follow-up. And that's what good leadership development looks like. The tools aren't isolated, they work together. And because knowing what to do and actually doing it are 2 very different things, I've created a free difficult conversations planner to go alongside this video. It helps you prepare for the conversation before you actually have it. It includes what happened, the facts and examples, the impact, what you need to address, your own emotional state, questions you want to ask, solutions you could explore, and the outcome you're looking for, as well as your agreed actions and follow-up. You can download it completely free from the Leadership Toolkit section from my website. I've put the link in the description below. And if you found this useful, I'd really appreciate it if you gave the video a like. It helps me understand which leadership topics are useful to you and helps YouTube show the video to other managers who might need it. And if you're building your confidence as a new manager, consider subscribing to the channel because there's plenty more practical leadership content coming your way. Because ultimately, leadership isn't about avoiding difficult moments. It's about becoming the person who can handle them. You need to have all the answers. You don't need to enjoy difficult conversations, and you definitely don't need to be the loudest person in the room. But you do need to be willing to have the conversation. Because sometimes the conversation you're most tempted to avoid is the conversation that could make the biggest difference. I'm Jennings. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.